I'm delighted to introduce this special Q&A session with Charles Eisenstein. Charles is a counterculture philosopher, author, and speaker who recently appeared on the Elevate podcast, where we discussed many of the different counter-narratives and conspiracies that have unfolded over the past couple of years in the context of the pandemic. We also looked at some of the broader trends towards transhumanism and some of the limitations of our notion of progress. We invited Charles to join us inside the Elevate Network for a private Q&A session, and this session is our recording of the discussion, where we covered a multitude of subjects, everything from cultural issues to the evolution of humanity, to spirituality, to climate change, and even chemtrails. Charles elegantly gave his responses to each of the questions, and this is your opportunity to join us in reviewing some of those responses. If you would like to take part in a Q&A session like this with our other podcast guests, and if you're not already a member of the Elevate Network, then we encourage you to head over to weareelevate.org and become a supporter, where you can access our private Q&A sessions live and our community discussions and a whole host of other benefits. So it's our hope to see you inside the Elevate Network. But for now, enjoy this conversation with Charles Eisenstein. Just to kick us off with an opening question, you've just spent an incredible weekend at a gathering called Emerge, which, like Elevate, is interested in exploring individual and societal transformation. I'm curious, from your perspective, what you see as the link between personal and social transformation, and is there a link in your view?
Well, yes, of course there's a link. Everybody knows that. And I don't actually want to simplify what the link is. I mean, obviously, society is composed of individuals, and society also creates who we are as individuals. So when societal change is underway, it changes us, and we become different, and a different society emerges from our own transformation. And yeah, so it's hard for me to answer that question outside of saying some cliches everybody knows.
Yes, I think you highlight this symbiotic relationship between the individual and the society. I think what people have felt over the last couple of years is that society is an external function and that we are separate from it. But I think, to me, part of these conversations are about how we can see ourselves as part of the overall whole, and that we're not separate, and that we are able to influence the world around us.
Maybe I would add, though, a third thing besides individuals and society. We are part of a larger community of life and a community of consciousness. And the changes that we are going through are not solely a function of ourselves. We're in an inconceivably mysterious process. So one way that I look at that is through the lens of mythology. Like, where does our mythology come from? Is it merely a social construct, or does mythology construct society and construct the human being more than the other way around? Where do myths and stories come from, really? So this is I would add this other dimension to it that's not quite as human-centric.
Powerful. That's a really useful distinction. Thank you. So I'd like to open up to our audience now. We wanted to have a kickoff point. Would anyone like to contribute to the discussion that we've begun, or ask a completely different question? You're very, very welcome to do so. Again, if you'd like to either type in the chat or raise your hand. Ray, you're first to the mark. I'll come to you.
Hi. Yeah. Sorry, I just realised I keep wanting to stick my oar in. Hi, Charles. Firstly, thank you for everything you're doing and speaking out against the establishment, but more importantly, sort of helping us move forward in a positive way. And I thought where you're going to go, you didn't mention the word spirituality, although maybe you touched on that, but that seems to have been quite a theme for the last 2.5 years about the issues we've had over the last 2.5 years and where we're going. In that, I get the sense from lots of people, including possibly Dan and some of his guests, that we are moving towards a more or maybe back to a more spiritual, what's the word? Spiritual something, I can't think of the word. Spiritual time, or maybe we're moving back or moving into a different type of spirituality. Is that what you were touching on?
You could say it that way.
Yeah.
Like I always ask when I'm asked about spirituality, what do we actually mean by spirituality?
Yeah.
One thing that I don't mean by it is a realm separate from materiality in which sacredness resides. I think that whole mindset is part of the problem, that we have to reestablish the sacredness of matter and the flesh and the world. But I don't think that spirituality is a useless word, because I use it to generally to refer to the things that our dominant paradigms have excluded from reality. So it would be the realm of the qualitative that cannot be measured and converted into data. It includes the phenomena that science denies are possible, and the dimensions of the human experience that don't fit into a materialistic, or like even the word materialistic though, like I'll bookmark that, that don't fit into an individualistic and modernistic society. Like those things are what I would call spiritual. And yeah, they're coming in now because the boundaries of the reality that we have agreed upon in the modern era are dissolving now. And we are no longer at home in those boundaries. They're no longer hospitable to us. So as that dissolution happens, and these things that had been outside those boundaries come in, spiritual is the word that we use for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like it's like a missing something, and we can have a debate about what something is, and maybe rediscovering that something.
Yeah. All those things that we excluded, you know, like,
yeah.
And also, I guess I would add to that just like the exploration of deep questions of human existence.
Right.
You know, who am I? Why am I here? What's the purpose of life? What's important? You could say that those are spiritual questions, because they're not something that we conventionally think about a lot.
Right.
You know, in our culture.
That's great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Okay, so let's see. We've got Al up next. Would you like to join us on the screen? You've got your wonderful plant background again.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Cool. It might be a little bit off topic. I've actually got two questions, if you don't mind me being so rude. But they're on totally different subjects. And the first one might be a little bit out of the range of this conversation. I don't know.
Nothing's out of the range.
Okay. The last couple of months, it's been very, very apparent that they are spraying something into our skies. You have come up with a beautiful blue morning, and then you get this crisscross of so-called vapor trails, or I prefer, you know, chemtrails, if you like. And then in the afternoon, we've got this horrible grey mass of stuff that comes up, and our beautiful blue skies have been obliterated, and we no longer get the kind of 5-6 days of a high pressure thing that we used to have in the summer. You know, we don't have a little fluffy clouds that evaporate into nothing, and blah blah blah. So it's not. I think that is happening, and I believe from your perspective, you are not an advocate of the man-made global warming kind of agenda, if you like. You've not succumbed to that myth. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But what's bugging me at the moment is, what can we do about it? And I don't know if you're the person to answer that question or not, but maybe you can give some sort of advice. That's question number one.
Yeah. So when we ask what can we do about it, we're kind of subsuming all of us as individuals into a generic we. But the answer to that question, I think, is unique to each person.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but I'll tell you the part that I can do about it. and that maybe some of you who resonate with my words might participate in. And I'll talk a little bit about chemtrails. I don't have absolute compelling proof that, that there is a nefarious agenda. I've certainly read a lot of the material, some of it, and I've read the debunkings of it, and I'm not fully satisfied with the debunkings, although there are some advocates that, of the theory that really ignore some important explanations. But overall, like I saw one time, and this is what really tipped me over the edge. I saw like a plane whose whatever chemtrail generator was malfunctioning, and it was going on, off, and making like a perfect dotted, like dashed line across the sky, like with clockwork regularity. And I'm like, maybe there's like some, striated weather atmospheric pattern but no, not really. Like I couldn't buy that, and so I'm kind of aware of this whole alternate reality of chemtrails and geoengineering. And what I would say, what is mine to do about it applies whether or not the conspiracy theories are factually true. And I don't mean to imply by saying this that they are not true. Okay, as I just disclosed, I am agnostic on it, leaning toward, I think there's something really going on. But what is mine to do applies either way, because I look at the mindset from which geoengineering seems completely natural and right and good and represents progress. And it is the mindset of progress that equates it with increasing our control on every level of reality, from the gene and the atom to society, through tracking and surveillance, and social engineering, through climate engineering, like turning all of reality, including the planet Earth, into an engineering object. That is one of the key dimensions of our reigning mythology. And I work for a different mythology, which understands that there is intelligence in the world outside the human being, and that our role is not to impose intelligence onto a world that has none, but to participate in the organic intelligence of life. So from that attitude, there's no way we would mess with the atmosphere in that way. And also from that attitude, understanding the sacredness of life and the intelligence of life, we come to my understanding of climate change, which it's not that it's not happening, but it's that it's a result of the degradation of ecosystems, the destruction of forests, wetlands, soil, fish, whales, insects, through pesticide use, et cetera, the destruction of the organs of a living being that we call Gaia. And of course, the climate gets deranged. And we have record heat, record cold, record drought, record floods. All these things are a symptom of derangement. And if we accepted our participation and membership in the tribe of all life on Earth and saw it as sacred, we would stop destroying in that way, and we would stop spraying chemtrails. So that's the level I work at. And that's not to demean the activists working on a much more direct level, organizations like Geoengineering Watch and things like that. But I'm just telling you what is mine to do. And then I would return the question to you and to everybody else listening. What is yours to do?
Well, I'm of a similar mind to you in that I've always been an ecologist, if you like, and I believe that the corporations are the biggest people to blame for what's going on our planet. We as people are not to blame for what's going on our planet. We are fed and we do have a personal responsibility, yes, but I think that education and just a personal responsibility. But I think that the corporations are getting away with literally murder sometimes, you know, and there needs to be some accountability. And I don't know how, as a little guy, I can hold these people to account. And that's where I'm kind of coming off at the moment. I feel a little bit useless. I look up into the skies every day and think, fucking hell, you know, why are they allowed to do this to our planet, you know? And
maybe your role is not to hold them accountable. Maybe your role is to contribute to the field of consciousness in which that accountability will happen. Because your feeling of helplessness in the face of this monstrous machine that is destroying the earth, on a spiritual, shall we say, level, that feeling is the result of lies that you have been fed. And something in you knows that your choices in service to life are significant. Through some mysterious process, you know that, like, those moments, even if it's invisible to everybody in the world and it doesn't go viral and no one ever finds out about it, when you choose to, you know, relate to a child, to play with a baby, to plant a tree, to make your garden a little more beautiful, like, any of these things send ripples of causality out that are not recognized by standard modern reductionistic thinking. But we have to understand, we have to trust the part of ourselves that knows that we are powerful. And what the expression of that may look like, that's going to be different for every person. And sometimes it may fit your received idea of how the world works, and you're going to help hold somebody to account. Maybe that is your role, but maybe it's not. And the only way you can know if in this moment my action is serving a more beautiful world is to tune into your inner compass. And everybody has this capacity, and we are powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you don't mind me squeezing another one in on the back end of that, you've kind of touched on it already.
Maybe if it's really quick, because I know there's a lot of people.
Yeah. So it was just you mentioned intelligent design and that kind of stuff, and I'm just curious to know with your thoughts on extraterrestrial life and whether or not within mythology and stuff like that, if there are others out there.
Short answer, yes. Okay. Yes, let's leave it at that for now.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Katja, I'm going to come to you next. Bear me a second. I'm just going to find you on the screen. Just disappeared. There you go. Over to you.
Okay. So my question regards conflict and reconciliation reunion. And I was wondering if you had contact with any of the people who accused you after you wrote Mob Morality and the Unvaxxed, or just in general during the COVID period, and if you have reconciled with any. I find myself very difficult to even reach out to people, and they don't reach out to me really. I think most people really don't want to even talk much about this period. And for me, this kind of mirrors all the polarizing conflicts we have in this world. And if we could make progress in that area, it would probably mean progress towards peace in general. So it's, yeah, really quite a big topic on my mind at the moment, conflict in general, and how to, move towards reunion.
Yeah, no one who is, among the public denouncers of me, or who, canceled me from events, no one has reached out for reconciliation or apology. But what's happened in some cases is that they kind of just want to forget that it ever happened. And, you know, I'm okay with that. Like, I don't need somebody to grovel and admit they were wrong. Like, I know everybody, um, you know, including myself, like, um, does wrong things, and you know, that they later regret, and it's hard to acknowledge it. And you know, I don't care really that much if people apologize, but what I do care about, like, I want to know that it's not going to happen again, you know, and that concerns me, when people are like, hey, back to normal, you know, that never happened. um, I don't feel as safe with those people. That's what it is. And the trust is damaged, and it's going to take, you know, like an apology would really help rebuild the trust. But if that doesn't happen, maybe time can help rebuild the trust. I don't know, but I do feel, um, yeah, a loss of trust with the people in my sphere who want to just forget that it ever happened.
Thank you, Katja. Mariam, I'm coming to you next. There we go. Thank you for raising your hand.
Thanks, Charles. You've got a lot of a body of really rich work. I decided to go for this question. 2 years on from everything that's happened lately, you know, which has resulted in restrictions and mandates, and many people, such as myself, have been very much involved in trying to stop or reverse or enlighten other people. That has been going on in the background, and obviously that takes a lot of energy. At the same time, I'm very much aware that this is probably the trajectory that we've been on as humanity, and you know, we are where we are, and it's a result of many things and not a them and us situation. I find it difficult to live in both of these worlds. If I go into the latter, where I think, well, this is where humanity is, I feel like I don't want to do much, and I just want to relax and go back to an old job and, you know, live the old life. And if I switch on to looking at what the outcome of the last 2 years is, it makes me want to go into that overdrive again. And I don't know if other people are in this sort of situation, but how does one find the middle ground? Because I suspect people like yourself have been living that balanced middle ground for some time.
Oh, maybe I averaged out onto a middle ground because of my vacillation. So I'm not sure if I'm the one to ask about that, but I can say, so yeah, like I'm still pretty, like I still follow COVID related issues, you know, like the vaccine efficacy and safety data, and like all these studies that are coming out showing that all the things that we dissidents were saying are more or less true. Well, not all the things, but our basic critique of social distancing, masking, lockdowns, vaccines, like we were pretty much right. And it's kind of like the last one, like the establishment just kind of wants it to go away without ever admitting they were wrong and apologizing for canceling and censoring and firing people and stripping their licenses and, like, you know, making any kind of amends or restitution. So I still follow these issues, and I have a certain amount of passion for them. I've not really been writing about it too much for one reason, because you know, I'm more of a philosopher, and like these superficial level, like I don't have the time or interest really to become an expert on these on the minutiae. Although I really appreciate people like, you know, Jessica Rose and Toby Rogers and James Lyons Weller and like all these people who are doing that work. But I noticed a part of me that, like during the height of COVID insanity, a certain part of me got attached to my role as a warrior, or as, I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but I got a bit attached to my voice occupying a certain spot in the ecosystem. Like I got some kind of identity from it. And so as events move on, I've become wary, like I've become really attentive to how much am I attached to the conversation, and what is really mine to say right now. So I don't think I'm quite done with it, but I'm definitely much more interested in like not fighting yesterday's battle. Even though, like, again, the people I named, like, I think there's still important work to be done, but I've kind of like moved to a deeper frame. Like I wrote the whole essay about I wrote all kinds of stuff. I wrote one on transhumanism in the metaverse. What I just said about the chemtrails too, it's like speaking about this basic value system of that worships control and associates that with progress, like and the fear of death that you know drove a lot of the insanity, and so I kind of have been occupying that domain a lot more than directly addressing the COVID issues.
Yes, I think that is the bigger picture, which I think a lot of people are coming to realize. But even there is urgency, because let's take the digital IDs, you know, they're still being built and they're still being rolled out, and everything is still really happening. Maybe it's not that obvious, or in terms of the plans for pandemic preparedness, you know, billions are being invested literally every week. We hear it in the news. So what was very visible is just not that visible, but all the mechanics and all the foundations are being put in very quickly. So you almost feel you don't have, you know, there is no real change in terms of urgency.
Yes, and those foundations, like those mechanics, those systems, they rest on an ideological foundation that has a certain view of human destiny, a certain view of technology, you know, representing progress. So that's the level I work at. But I agree with you. Like there are, like the machinery is being put into place still. Like it's still moving forward for a technological dystopia. And again, like each one of us is called to address that on a different level. And I would just add one thing here. You said there is urgency. I like to distinguish between urgency and hurry. Urgency is a feeling of disquiet, like something, it is time to do something. Something must be done. The way I am being and acting is inconsistent with the situation that I know to be true. That's urgency is a kind of a discomfort. And it often gets translated onto hurry, which can catapult us into patterns of response and modes of solution that may not be helping at all, or even could be part of the problem. So I like to, and that doesn't mean that there's never a time to hurry, but like just look at the urgency around climate change. You know, like when it's translated into hurry, we got to do something. Well, one thing that happens is we give power to those who are already in power because they're the ones who can do something. Second thing that happens is that we take actions that make sense only from a very limited understanding of the phenomenon that end up causing even more harm. Like, you know, such as, you know, biofuels plantations and wind turbine farms. So this is, I guess I just want to speak to the need for humility that recognizes that the problem is much, much bigger and deeper than we thought it was, and that hesitates to jump too quickly onto ready solutions and ready even ways of understanding it. Like, for example, the good versus evil template. The problem is caused by evil people. Then we know what to do. Okay, fine. But what if the problem isn't actually caused by evil people? What if evil people are a symptom and we're constantly at war with the symptom? Then we'll never, ever stop the war. It'll be perpetual war. So I guess, and I'm not saying don't act, and pull back. I'm saying recognize the moments where you feel futility and burnout and trust those. That's
Right.
the time to stop, to turn inward, to wait, to abide in the unknowing. And it won't last forever.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. Thank you, Charles. Brian, are you with us? I'm just going to bring you onto the screen. Your video is not currently on, so I don't know if I can bring you. Add spotlight. There we go. You're currently on mute, Brian. Sorry.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
there we are, loud and clear. Yeah.
Hi guys, hi everyone. Hi Charles. It was a question about self and other. How do our conceptions of self and other, how do they play into how we've ended up on this materialistic paradigm, and how can we transcend it?
Yeah, I've written about this a lot. One of the core ideologies of our time is the separate self. The answer to the spiritual question, who am I, has been over the course of modernity that you are a separate individual. Could be a soul encased in flesh, could be a computer, a wetware computer in a meat sack, could be a Freudian bubble of psychology, or an economic self-interested actor. There's, or the phenotypic expression of the genes. I mean, there's many, many versions of it, but that's the general consensus of modernity about what you are. And obviously, that's a very narrow, partial view of the self, as we are, more and more of us are waking up to, that we are interconnected, interrelated, interexistent. So, that's my intellectual answer to that question. I wrote a book called The Ascent of Humanity that pretty much attempted to trace every institution and atrocity of our time to this ideology of separation. And so that's the intellectual answer. But maybe you could hear a different answer in my tone of voice and in my humanness and in your own. Like, we don't have to actually convince people that this is false. We're ready to believe other myths now.
So are you really saying you just need to stand in your own truth more?
I would say that I would just point to our general recognition of this awakening that's happening, and urge us to trust that it is happening. Then we don't have to push as much. And the more that we trust it, the more we become catalysts for it to happen with others. Because that's how it happens for me too. It's not some mighty effort of will that I transcend the ego. It's the generosity of the world that gives me experiences of love that melts me. And then I'm able to do that for others too. And so we all become enlightened together.
Very nice. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Charles. Powerful place to enter. Russell, you were next up in the line, so I'm going to bring you up with us. Good to see you, Russell.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. You probably just answered my question, actually, Charles. And I was going to say one of my strategy for dealing with the past 2.5 years has simply been, and it may seem rather childish, not to comply. And I have not complied with anything over the past 2 years at all. And just simply gone on with leading my life. I've not been evangelistic about it in any way at all, not tried to persuade anybody. But in fact, I brought some people round to my way of thinking. And one of the things that really interested me in the Elevate Network and what Dan is doing is I've tried to create that alternative world and build something that's attractive to other people and they want to follow me into it. But I wonder, from a philosophical and practical perspective, how successful is that really going to be? And does it have limitations? I'm already finding that we're looking at the COVID pass now being your passport to having healthcare in the UK, and without it, it's going to be very limited for you. I just wonder if we end up being dragged into it against our will anyway.
Yeah, non-compliance, I think, is a powerful political tool, but ultimately the reason to do it isn't because of the ends that you predict it will achieve. There's also a spiritual aspect to it, because by complying or not complying with various social rituals, which is what all the COVID stuff is, it's a set of rituals and taboos. By complying or not complying with those, you define to yourself who you are. These systems of ritual have themselves a kind of a consciousness, or you could say a frequency. And for some people, they are totally, some people are totally at home in that frequency. They've got no problem with it. They're not making any kind of, they're not betraying themselves to go through those rituals. The masks are signifiers that mean different things to different people. And if you are in the state of consciousness that corresponds to the reigning paradigms of our society, then you will feel at home in those rituals. But most of the people on this call, to some extent, do not feel at home with those. And it feels like an act of self-betrayal. And that alone is reason enough not to comply.
That's exactly why I've been doing it. I feel true to myself by not complying.
Yeah. Even if it doesn't do any good, and even if someday the Gestapo drag you out of your house into the vaccine van and forcibly vaccinate you, like, even if it doesn't work to change the world, it's still worth doing. And it becomes all the more powerful when you are doing it from the place I just described.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I've had those thoughts as well. And yes, I'm doing it for myself because that's the world in which I feel comfortable, and that's the world I want to live in. So that's great. I just wondered if there are many limitations to that, and I suppose that goes back to the conversation you had with Mariam about being hurried.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you, Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Penny, if I could bring you up to join us now. I think your question would be interesting to follow Russell's.
Yeah. So Dr. Frankl, who you probably are very aware of, said that we come into the world asking two questions: who am I, and where do I come from? Which is something you were alluding to earlier on this evening. So as a survivor of the Holocaust, he discovered in the camp that hope was the key to whether someone survived or not. And we know today that hope is in very short supply, particularly amongst the youngsters. When an inmate lost hope, they died very quickly. And from what I understand, that there are big problems with the young losing hope. So Frankl based his life's work on this. And my question really is, what is your understanding of the word hope? And we so often use this word hope in terms of creation. We create our own hope, basically. But my question is, is it about creating hope, or does hope, in your opinion, have a different sort of substance?
It has a different sort of substance.
Yeah.
Hope is a function of self-trust. And it's different from wishful thinking, where you have to persuade yourself that something is possible. Authentic hope comes from, it's a premonition of, it comes from a glimpse of a future that is actually possible, a recognition of a possibility. You may not know how to get to that future, but you know that there is a way to do that. And when you are, and when you trust the part of yourself that knows that, then you are able to transmit hope to others. If you don't trust that part of yourself that knows that, then you will feel despair. And you might try to persuade and convince yourself that it is actually realistic, that we will, overcome the techno-totalitarian elites and all those people. But if you have to persuade yourself, that isn't actually hope anymore, and you won't be able to convince others either, because you don't fully believe it yourself. So you have to touch the part of you that actually knows that such a future is possible. And how do you know? It's because you've seen it. You've had experiences that show you the future and that you can recognize as outreaches of the future into the present. So receive those experiences with gratitude. Gratitude is what integrates them. And as you receive them fully, you'll come to trust them, and you will transmit hope to others. Because when you speak from direct experience, people will believe you.
Yeah.
Even if you don't speak, you'll radiate that. And if you sometimes feel hopeless, then you can ask, okay, well, why aren't I trusting myself and what I've actually seen and what I actually know? What hurts in me that needs to be healed and cleared so that I can come more fully into my trust?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I mean, I sort of see it, hope integrally linked with faith, but also with love. This whole trio, this whole Christian trio of faith, hope, and love, I think has maybe been misunderstood so much. And it's almost like you can't separate the three. I don't know what you feel about that, but I just sense that, because you're talking to me about how I can speak that into somebody's life. And I guess I want to be someone who can be useful to the next generation of what that looks, how can I bring hope, real hope, to a generation of people that are.
So speaking specifically to you, and I'm sure others also, it's really important to surround yourself with people, or at least to touch in to a group of people who validate your hope. You can't hold it by yourself. Most people cannot hold it by themselves. You need to put yourself in situations with very, very positive people who are well developed in their trust that a more beautiful world is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nourish yourself that way. It's really important.
Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Hopefully you'll find that community between Elevate and Charles's community of people who radiate that positivity and can validate that trust for you. Thank you. Matt, I'm going to come to you next. Let me see. There we go. Good to see you, Matt.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Charles. Charles, I picked up from your conversations with Dan, and you mentioned specifically Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab. So talking about them not really being sophisticated enough to be able to organise things that have been happening recently on such a successful and grand scale, which I completely agree with. I think they're more likely just very well resourced chancers and opportunists. But given also, I picked up that you were saying that this is nothing new under the sun, that these things have gone on before, that these things have been happening for decades, centuries, possibly millennia. So do you think that there are actually sort of common threads through that, as in that there are groups that are behind any of this? And if so, I mean, does it even matter in terms of us being able to resist it, or to you know, to not fall into line for them to get what they want?
Okay, so first I'll say that to believe that there is a group or groups that are kind of at the top of the pyramid orchestrating everything, it buys into the same worship of control that runs our whole civilization. And it gives too much power to the mindset of control. So for that reason, because I think that there is intelligence outside the human being, there's an intelligence in the world, in the way that events organize themselves. There's such a thing as synchronicity that aligns itself around our state of consciousness to reflect that consciousness back at us. Like, you got to take all these things into account. In any conspiracy theory, you can't ignore these things. And like these deep psychological forces that go back before the dawn of history that I've written about extensively, mob morality, for example. Now, I do think that there are conspiracies that are subsumed underneath this overarching structure, but they're not the primary explanation for why the world is the way that it is. Or you could say that the most powerful people on earth are themselves puppets of ideologies, mythologies, unconscious social forces. So, and that's important because merely removing them from power is not going to change very much if we don't also act on the level of these psychic forces, psychosocial forces, mythologies. And that's what my work is about, so that, maybe the revolution succeeds. I mean, usually what happens when the revolution succeeds is that it replaces the old tyrants with new tyrants. I don't want to see that happen. We have to change the ground. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Charles. Powerful. Shakti, I'm going to bring you up now for a different angle. Oh, hello.
Can you see me? Where am I?
Can see. Yes, yes, I can see. I hear you.
I'm down there. Hi, Charles. Hi, Dan. Thank you for this. I love both of you. You're amazing. Saved my life. So somewhere, Charles, I heard you speaking. I can't remember who it was with. It was two other people. It could have been Marcus Aubrey. It could have been another bunch of people. But I remember you talking about the, I think it was a shamanic story or tradition where they say that the great bird has been flying with the masculine wing. And at this time, the feminine wing is becoming unfurled. That was you, wasn't it?
That wasn't me. That was the person I was speaking to.
But you were there together. Okay, yeah. And what you said, or what whoever was speaking said, which made complete sense to me, and actually made it much easier for me, is that the feminine doesn't make plans somehow. You have to allow that to come and move you from the inside. And what that did for me is it made me feel okay, because I live in Cornwall actually, Dan. I live at Sennen Cove, so my life is really simple. I just grow vegetables and walk by the sea, teach tantra, and what I do is not go anywhere near fear. If there's any fear, I sort of move myself away from it and try and keep my energy positive. I know we're going to move into a beautiful world. I know it's the time. I know we were born for this time. But I just wanted to see what your perspective was of the unfurling of the feminine and the actual just waiting for things to come to you rather than, because when this first happened, I got into a high level of anxiety about how was I going to save the whole world? You know, how was I going to do it? I could see that there was, you know, I could see what was going on and how the hell was I going to do it? You know, quite a level of anxiety around it. But slowly, over the past 2 and a bit years, as I guess all of us have done, studied and read and, you know, and just the things that have settled in me are the things that settled in me, leaving me in a place of relaxation. And I guess very occasionally, ever such tiny bit occasionally, I go, am I doing enough?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big topic, you know. I think what's happened is that both the feminine and the masculine have been distorted in modern civilization, and some aspects suppressed and others exaggerated, but mostly distorted. So we're seeking what is the healthy and even sacred expression of the feminine and the masculine. So like a lot of what it's like a lot of this idea that, you know, the masculine has been dominant and we need to return to the feminine, I think comes from a distorted view of what the masculine even is. I don't think masculinity is about forcing things.
No.
It might be about asserting, it might be about directing, but only with full connection, if it's in healthy expression, only with full connection to life and its feminine aspect. I like to use the metaphor of a dance floor. Like the partner that leads is a masculine partner, but he's not jerking her around the dance floor. He's actually sensing the dance and sensing where does she want to go through these really subtle cues. He's in a state of pure attentiveness and presence. And then he knows where to lead. It's where she actually wants to go, but the feminine may not be so directed. It's more holistic and you know, less differentiated. So that's the kind of partnership that the bird, when it unfurls both its wings, you know, then it can fly true. Right. So I can say a lot more, but I just want to say, like, you know, it's really about the healing and recovery of both masculine and feminine.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks.
Very powerful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're just coming up to the end, near the end of the session now. So Julian, you had a question in the chat there, so I'm going to bring you up next.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Hi, Dan. Thank you very much. And Charles also. Yeah, my question I put in the chat as well. Someone's already reacted to it. I've spent the last 1.5 or 2 years preparing myself for a life on the fringe. And in that kind of modus operandi, at least mental modus operandi, I've met many great people. I live in Germany, and so there's very many positives. But my experience, especially having children, and one of whom really does not want to re-enter the school system, which is in Germany, it's actually illegal not to send your child to a building. They have to attend a physical building. It's one of the only 2 countries in the world who have this this law. So we are, as a family, we're thrown very much directly up against the state. We've had our threats of fines and possibly court action. So I would describe this as a character building exercise, in part. And my question really was around the theme of outcast, because that could be a personal thing that's been triggered in me. I quite acknowledge that. But it's a very powerful effect of this that, at least myself, I feel extremely sidelined, and I feel society has betrayed me or let me down in certain ways. Been through the anger, and now I'm thinking, how can I make the world real that I would like to see? I know people who are thinking about alternative health insurance systems, and there are doctors who are interested in getting out of the system and setting something up which is more based on let's say a more humanistic model of treatment. There are people here I know who are trying to set up an alternative bank. There are things happening, and my question really was, how far should that go? And should we also be putting some energy into trying to change the system from within? Or is it time to just, hook up with those people who are wanting what I want?
These objective questions are not necessary for you. Should we do this? Is it okay to do it that way? Which way's better? What I'm tapping into here. So first, I think about this a lot, speak about it, parallel societies. Where we're actually building alternative institutions. You mentioned some of them: healthcare, schools, food systems, entertainment here. Like we couldn't go to normal venues because we didn't have our fax card. So we had to start making our own, this is a parallel society. And then at some point though, you run up against state force as you are. So this is not everybody's to do, but it might be yours to do, which is that you're the one who sticks out your neck first. And maybe you maybe you go to court, maybe you do civil disobedience, and because your feelings of betrayal and anger are totally valid and not to be prematurely discarded. Like anger is a natural response to a violation, and it gives you the energy to resist the violation. And then eventually that can be transformed into loving action. And I could see, like, how old is your son? Is it daughter?
My daughter is 14.
Yeah. So like a 14-year-old can be really eloquent and authentic in her expression. And I just like pictured like a court hearing where she explains to the court why she doesn't want to go back to school. And she says it with such intelligence and eloquence that even if they rule against her, a seed is planted that ripples outward. And the system changes. And it will not change if we do not hold the consciousness of the alternative and issue a prayer for it to change. And the prayer, to be effective, we have to mean it. And how does God know that we really mean it? It's we are willing to take a risk for it. Like, and demonstrate to the universe that yes, this is what we are asking for. And such actions, even if like directly in your own experience, they don't work and you end up, getting fined or jailed or whatever. Like if you can hold your commitment, it is incredibly powerful. And I'm not saying that this is what you should do, but it may be yours to do. And to go through the initiation of a warrior here and discover that aspect of yourself that isn't afraid or that is not ruled by fear. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Charles.
Thank you, both of you. We have one very short practical question, Charles, if you're okay to take
one more is fine.
Yeah. Dan, do you want to ask your question of Charles? Dan Haylock, you're muted. Sorry, you're muted at the minute, Dan. Dan, you're currently muted.
I don't think he's hearing you. Oh, there he is.
Thanks, guys. I'm struggling to put this one into words. It's a very similar question to the last question. You said in your talk with Dan that you could pick yourself up and move 100 miles down the road and pretty much settle into society that's pretty much the same as where you are now. So we know that there's hard times coming. I don't think anyone's in denial of that. So, I mean, are you personally prepping in any way for that, mentally or physically?
I've been prepping my whole life, not by hoarding food or anything like that, but by, as much as I've been able, and as much as I've been clear on this, and I don't know, maybe I'll just say that anything that we do to contribute to the community and the world is a form of prepping, because what will sustain us in really hard times isn't our stores of food or guns or our own personal security. It's our relationships. People who will take care of us when we're helpless. So the best preparation is to build those relationships, to be generous, for example. Because like even from this like a financial standpoint, money can evaporate. Money can be seized by the government. Money can disappear with hyperinflation. Banks can fail. Like, it is not safe. But when you are in relationships of reciprocity and people feel grateful to you for what you've done for them, that's a kind of security that cannot be taken away. Not nearly as easily. Like, then you're secure. And on a more like esoteric level, even beyond the human world, what we give to the world forms a kind of a security. It holds us more stably in material reality because we're tied. The ties that we create tie us here. And that's a kind of a security that operates even beyond the human realm. So yeah, in that sense, I do believe in prepping. And maybe, you do like save a certain amount of food, and a generator and stuff, and you're able to contribute to, I'm not saying like don't do that, but it's not really that much security to do that. You got a generator, if things get really bad, someone's going to come and take it away from you. There it is, rumbling away, target for theft right away. But not if you're sharing it with 10 neighbors. Then it's much safer.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Charles. In closing, Charles, I'd like to ask, in the spirit of your answer, you've kindly contributed an awful lot to our community over the last few weeks. What can we do to contribute to your work? And I know that everyone here will be certainly keen to express their gratitude, but is there anything that we can do as a community to contribute to you and your work and your community right now?
I mean, I'm always grateful when people share my Substack posts, and subscribe and so forth. And I would love when my book comes out at the end of July. I would, love it if people, put a little bit of attention into it and they take some action to share it or whatever. So yeah, since you asked so kindly, I can name those things. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And could you just say a little piece before we wrap up? But obviously, our community are very familiar with Mighty Networks using the platform that Elevate use, and I'm not sure everyone would be fully aware that you also have a Mighty Networks platform. Could you just tell us a little bit about that and how people can access that?
It's called A New and Ancient Story. I think nascommunity.org and AAS. We're not like actively like looking for more members, but if you feel like strongly called to join, I mean, we had taken a pause on accepting anybody, but I think that's over now. I'd have to ask Patsy. Patsy's like the real host. She's my former wife and just a really wonderful person. But yeah, that's what it's called, and it's basically based on reverence. That's the guiding principle in reverence and communication.
Thank you. Yes, I've just gratitude for Patsy as well. She's been enormously helpful in helping us with the setup of Elevate and answering our questions around some of the technicalities. So sending a gratitude towards her as well. Well, thank you. I'd like to ask all of our crew to say here tonight, please extend your gratitude. We usually end with a cheer and a round of applause. If you want to unmute yourself, you can please share your gratitude with Charles. This has been a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for being with us again. Can we please show our love and appreciation to Charles this evening?
Thank
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Charles. Really appreciate you being here. We'll stay on for a few more minutes to wrap up, but I just want to say thank you again to Charles. And again, you can check out our interview that we did last week. All the links inside the Elevate network. But it's been a beautiful evening with you here, Charles. And I know you've been traveling. You've been extremely busy, so it's incredibly grateful to have you with us tonight and taking the time to answer so many people's questions. So sending love to you and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks.
Cool. Good night for now. Okay, folks. So I hope you found that a deeply insightful session this evening. Some wonderful topics explored. The depth of questions, the variety of questions brought some really interesting dynamic to the conversation. And I'm grateful that we could all be here to share this space. Now, those of you with us tonight who are members of the supporters circle within the Elevate network, these are the types of conversations that we'll continue to be hosting with our podcast guests. We've got Eric Edmeades coming up. His episode is going live tomorrow, so you can find out more about Eric. Some of you may or may not know Eric, but he's the founder of a program called Wild Fit. He's an anthropologist, fitness expert, health expert. He's going to be talking about what he calls food freedom and the food revolution. So look out for that tomorrow, but he'll be with us next week. And then we've got Matthias Desmet joining us on Tuesday the 12th. So look out for Matthias. And we were also we've got a bit of an onslaught of guests over the next few weeks. But we want to create community spaces where we actually create the opportunity for you to connect and have these types of discussions amongst yourselves, exploring ideas, making sense of the world together, exploring initiatives and projects that you can collaborate on. And we've got we're looking at different practices that we can bring to these community sessions to kind of really make them come alive. So they're really interactive, participatory experiences. So watch this space. We really want to create a really high vibe community whereby we do become the change that we want to see in the world and live in accordance with that change we wish to see. And this is your support network, one of many, I'm sure. I know there's lots of communities out there right now, but our goal is to be that support network for you and foster those communities and have those types of conversations that can really help us to challenge the status quo where necessary. I think we've addressed that tonight, but also really focus on the change we wish to create and our own individual role. That was, I think, a real key takeaway. So watch this space with events coming up. Quick promo for the Camp Out event for those of you in the UK or those of you traveling. I visited the site in the Mendips today where we're hosting the Camp Out event on the 22nd to the 25th of July. It's a really beautiful space in the heart of the Mendips. It's really going to be a kind of in nature experience with talks, health and well-being, healing, music, dance, arts and crafts. We went through the program this afternoon. It's going to be a beautiful experience. If you'd like to join us in person, a physical event will be in the Mendips from the 22nd to the 25th of July. Elevate are co-hosting the 24th on the Sunday. But having seen the program, the whole event, I'm just excited to just go and explore. And it's one of those events where you look at that and think, which thing should I go to? Should I go and do this healing experience, or should I go to that talk, or should I go and have a conscious dance in a field? I invite you to come and join us. The details are inside the network. As a network member, you get a 10% discount on the tickets. As always, there's always questions about pricing. It's outside of my remit. But Pete Lawrence, who's the co-organizer of the overall event, is in our network, and he's happy to field questions. So if you have any practical questions, I saw questions there about dogs. I don't actually know the answer about dogs. I'm not sure dogs are allowed, although I did see a dog on the site today. I think they don't allow dogs because no, they're not allowed because it's a working farm. And I think the farm have decided that they will not allow other animals on the site. So I think that's that handled. Felicity, any other announcements about things coming up? Regional groups coming? Do you want to tell us a little bit about what's coming up there?
So we have started to receive applications for people who would like to step into the role of regional ambassadors, which we're really excited about. As Dan said, there's been a huge amount going on with the podcast and the content as well. So it is a juggling act as always, but we're putting the regional plans into place and we'll be making some further announcements about that next week.
Indeed. And Ray, who's on the call with us, we had our next step call today on the pandemic reform work that we're looking to do. For those of you who joined our recent All Network call, we talked about 5 key areas where we want to help influence change and become a catalyst for change, bringing together different groups and organisations to tackle everything from the public inquiry to vaccine accountability through to some of the issues around biosurveillance, but also bringing together groups that are looking in a forward-focused way, looking at the future of healthcare. So Elevate, that Charles used the term as well, Elevate will, our goal for Elevate is to become a platform and a catalyst so that we can support the good work that's been done around the world, and where there are gaps, we hope to fill the gaps. At the front end, obviously, our content is a sense-making platform. We want to expand all of the work that we're doing on the content. But in the back end here with the community, it's a place for co-creation, collaboration, and we want to signpost you to so much of the good campaigns that are happening, but not just campaigns tackling the old, actually signposting some of the solutions that are coming forth. We're also very aware that we've got some very talented people in our network, and we want to find ways to collaborate with you and help shine a light on the work that you're doing. So like Felicity said, there's an abundance of work. This is my 3rd session of the day. I started with Sir Christopher Chope this morning. Quite frankly, I mean, we're looking at doing some early access stuff on content for our supporters. Christopher Chope is an absolute hero. Oh my goodness. What a battle he's fighting on the vaccine damage bill. You'll hear about that very shortly, hopefully. And then Zuby, rapper Zuby, I had on the show tonight. He's a character and a beautiful soul. And again, he's been creating some amazing content around the issues that we've been exploring for the last couple of years. But yeah, really illuminating conversations. So we've got some really interesting content coming up. We also want to create a group where we start to take suggestions and work more closely with our network on content creation. So we're really kind of exploring different ways. We can help form new connections, bring the community together, start to support change-making activities, both from campaign perspectives, co-creation, positive forward-facing initiatives, and create a space for you to explore and become part of the change you wish to see. So I think we're done for tonight. Is there anything else to add, Felicity or Dan, Marianne? No. Okay. I, for one, am absolutely shattered. This has been it's felt like one of the longest days I've had in a long time. Some very big conversations. So I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you all for being here. My call to action to you is, if you enjoy your experience on these types of calls, we really need your help to share these, because you have the unique experience of being here live in the room with our guests. We will publish a replay so that other people can access those. If you joined our community update earlier this month, part of the reason we created this program is actually to help finance the organization and become more financially sustainable. That's why we've created that membership offer to become a supporter. We've got some fairly chunky losses from the first half of the year that we're trying to recoup and become reach our kind of monthly break-even point, so that we can, because we're now investing in software and the team. So in order to help us grow, this is why we've created this. So if there's people you know in your network that would get value of being part of this type of conversation, please help us to share the Elevate network. Do tell people about what we're doing here. You can access the main network for free, but for those of people who want to join these types of conversations, the membership is available. We have got a concession rate for those who've got different financial circumstances, but we're also open for those who are financially in a different position right now. We don't want anyone to be excluded, so we'll always find a way. We've also created a pay it forward offer for those of you who wish to contribute at a slightly higher level, to actually help provide almost a scholarship for those who can't afford to contribute this minute in time. but we want to talk more about this because it's going to be it's an important piece of the puzzle for us in terms of keeping the ship afloat. We've got around about a month and a half, 2 months worth left of cash reserves, and after that things get quite tricky. So we need your support in helping getting the word out about what we're doing, because it feels very much like the plane is just taking off and we can't afford to run out of fuel at this stage, because the community initiatives, the campaigns, all of these things are so important. So if there's people that would benefit being part of the network, please do share. Continue to share the podcast, the episodes you enjoy. It just helps us get the word out. So that's my final call to action to you. I hope you've had a wonderful evening this evening. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation with Charles. And I wish you well and look forward to our next conversation here in the Elevate Network. So peace and love to you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you are. And I'll see you again inside the Elevate Network. Thank you for joining us for this special Q&A session with Charles Eisenstein. I hope you enjoyed the variety of the conversation and the depth of the conversation that took place over this special session. We've spoken to a number of the members who took part in this, and many of them have said they were deeply moved by the conversation. And my reflection on the overall session was that Charles has a unique gift, an ability to see within people's minds, their souls, and reflect back what's already within them. And I think when we have those moments of reflection and introspection, it is that leads us to have that sense of being moved. So I hope you were moved by this. I hope you found an enjoyable conversation, thought-provoking discussion at the very least. And I would like to invite you to join us inside the Elevate Network. If you're not already a member, you can head over to weareelevate.org, join our supporter program, and take part in future Q&A sessions just like this. We regularly invite our podcast guests to come and join us. We have community sessions. We have a whole host of other benefits, including early access to content, discounts, etc., for our members. So we do hope that you'll join us. So visit us at weareelevate.org, and I hope to see you inside our private online community. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you for our next session.